politician, and this is not justified. These allegations are not justified at all. We should be looking at other ways which we can resolve these things before we accuse someone of something, and we only do so if they are guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, it was rather hilarious that the affirmative team gets up and says, look, it works. We can find problems and therefore we're right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what works is when we elect the right person. What works is when we elect someone based on their policies. What doesn't work is when we elect someone on the basis that they're black or on the basis that they're females, like we're seeing in the Democratic primaries in the US at the present time. But that's a major issue, and that's one of the things I'll be looking at in my substantive material later on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the second major issue that the affirmative team has brought up today, and they said it needs to be known. If something has possibly gone wrong, the whole world needs to know that it might have happened. And ladies and gentlemen, they've talked about the right to free speech, and what they're invading here is the right to privacy, ladies and gentlemen. People have the right to have an issue resolved before the whole world needs to know about it. And that's what we saw with Bill Clinton. The opposition came up and said, yes, there were allegations he cheated on his wife, and therefore it led to a public debate. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where the problem is. There was a public debate. There was defaming Clinton before we even knew if he had cheated on his wife in the first place. And what we saw is it clearly defamed him, and it clearly hindered his prospects as a politician. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in my substantive material today, I'll be looking at the risks of running an election campaign simply based on people's race or on people's sex, etc. And I'll be also looking at the better ways we can deal with allegations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the risk, we need to see that what's currently happening, for example, in the Democratic primaries, as I pointed out, is that we're seeing Obama, we're seeing Clinton essentially run their whole campaigns based on defaming their opposition. In fact, their policies haven't really come up too much. All that's really happened is that their key political advisors have made it known to everyone that Obama is a black man, that he is possibly a Muslim. And ladies and gentlemen, what we're essentially seeing is that in the US, people are making their decisions based on these remarks. Now, for sure, we don't know necessarily if Obama is a Muslim, but that's not something we should be deciding who should run the country and in America based on. We should be deciding based on policies. And the policies have essentially played no role in the Democratic primaries, ladies and gentlemen. All we've seen is Clinton's a woman, so don't vote for her. Obama's a black man, don't vote for him. And ladies and gentlemen, this isn't effective because at the end of the day, they're not going to be picking someone based on their policies. And ladies and gentlemen, it's for this reason that it's not effective and it's not justified to say that someone shouldn't be voted for in an election because they may possibly be of a different religion. And ladies and gentlemen, the opposition has come up today and they've essentially said, okay, we've got to look at the integrity of politicians, ladies and gentlemen. The integrity of the system is what's at stake here, ladies and gentlemen. They're saying, okay, we can damage the integrity of an individual. And ladies and gentlemen, by doing this, they're damaging the integrity of the system because we are electing people for the wrong reasons. And it's on the negative side of the house here today that we've proposed ways in which we can solve these allegations without having to go through all this jargon and sending it into the media. And we're looking at things like the ICAC. And the reason the ICAC exists, ladies and gentlemen, is to solve disputes like this, so that they can be fixed, I guess, under a roof where no one needs to know about it, and then if someone is found guilty, it can be released to the media. Not, I think someone possibly might have done something to a best friend of mine who lives west of Newtown, and therefore I'm going to stick him in the media as some sexual pervert. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't effective. This isn't what we need, ladies and gentlemen. And it is for these reasons that character attacks are not legitimate, because they're not allowed, they shouldn't be allowed. They're not effective, ladies and gentlemen, they're not justified. And unfortunately, what we see at the present time is people trying to take the easy road out by simply saying, don't vote for this person because they're a woman, don't vote for this person because they're black. And ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't necessarily help them to win an election, as we've seen with the whole Kevin Rudd scores thing, but we've also seen that it decreases the importance of someone's policies. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, the policies are what should be winning elections. So ladies and gentlemen, when we look at this criteria as a whole in today's debate, We are looking at whether a character attack is allowed. We're looking at whether it's effective and whether it's justified. And ladies and gentlemen, on the grounds that there is a major risk of ruining what an election is about, on the grounds that there are far better ways to deal with allegations like this, no, ladies and gentlemen, it's not allowed. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's not effective. And no, ladies and gentlemen, there is no way that it is justified. And therefore, we beg to oppose.
I now call upon the second affirmative speaker, Matt Nielsen, to continue their case.
Ladies and gentlemen, the negative team today has outlined 3 clear criteria. We've already spoken that it is allowed. In our society, we have free speech as a key principle. We have the right to say what we want. The discussion, therefore, is based on whether political attacks are effective and whether they are justified, which I will be conclusively proving in my speech today. But first, to correct some flaws in the opposition's arguments. The key point was made that political attacks are not justified, and an example was given of a state politician, Mr. Brogdon, who was accused of sex crimes. Now, it's hard to argue that this exposure was not justified when a major public figure and a leader of our society, his conduct is questionable. When this is the case, it is very hard to argue that it is not justified to expose this to the general public who are being led by this person, the general public who are being served by this public servant. It is very, very hard to argue that this is not justified and bring this to the general public's attention. We want a well-functioning democracy. That's what this debate is about. That's what political attacks are about. And some dodgy, questionable figure being destroyed versus the well-being of our government and society, I think we know what has to come out on top. We need a well-functioning democracy, and we can't worry about Mr. Brogdon being at home having a whinge because he's a dodgy, crying figure. And the point was made about privacy. Now, the point was made that politicians need privacy, and that this privacy is violated by attacks based on character. Yet, in one point, politicians know that their privacy is going to be breached when they become public figures. That is part of the role, being a celebrity, being a politician. You know and are prepared for the fact that you are now public domain and that you will be experiencing less privacy. If politicians have nothing to hide, if they have no dirty skeletons in their closet, then they have nothing to fear about their lives being public domain. They have nothing to fear about what was once private now being out in the public arena. The accountability of our politicians is more important than their personal privacy. As I said, a well-functioning democracy, the well-being of our society and government is more important than a single politician feeling that his privacy is violated. These are public figures, and serious issues that they have need to be in the public forum in the form of a public debate. The public who are being served by these figures has a right to know about serious issues that are affecting the leaders of our society. An example was also given in terms of the US election, the primaries that are coming up right now. And the point was made that we are seeing a lack of policies and a focus on the character attacks. Well, I don't know how much political coverage has been seen by the negative team, but perhaps they're just not digging deep enough to see the clear policies that have been outlined in terms of the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Iraq War withdrawal, to give just 2 examples. The fact that character attacks are cropping up in the media, that seemingly defamatory speeches are what is being focused on in the media, is the issue of engaging the voters, of involving the public in the system. Now, the negative team, by effectively arguing throughout their case that the public should not be involved, that all issues involving major public figures should be resolved behind closed doors, is arguing that the public should not be involved. The public should not be involved in the democracy. The public should not be involved in our public figures who are supposed to be serving us. And as I will go on to discuss later, the idea of character attacks, the idea of discussion of the personal background of public figures is a key part of engaging voters in the system and maintaining an interest in our democracy and keeping the public involved in what they should be involved in, which is the running of our Western liberal democracy government. Now, discussion of character of politicians is essential to an effectively functioning liberal democracy. A key part of this are the effects in relation to the voting public of Australia. Today I'll be talking about how character discussion is relevant to policy making and decisions, and therefore relevant to the people who are affected by these policies, the greater Australian public. And I'll also talk about how character discussion and discussion